So we talked about stack buffer overflows and heap overflows. Then there's a third class of attacks that are called format string attacks. Okay? So what is a format string attack? It relates to the fact that so they relate to this function called printf, right? And printf takes, two arguments, or rather a first argument, and then a variable number of additional arguments, right? And the printf function figures out how many arguments are there by looking at the format string. Okay, so the format string can say, for instance, the format string says %s %d. So this is a string argument. This is an int argument. So depending upon what the format says, you can have any number of arguments passed to printf. Okay, and you can see that there is potentially a problem because the format, this controls the interpretation of the arguments. The arguments are basically nothing but content of the stack, right? So if the attacker can control the format string, then the attacker controls how the stack contents are interpreted, right? So this is kind of you can see that this is kind of a problem, right? You don't really see how, at this point, you may not see how this can be exploited, but you can see that, okay, the attacker should be able to control, what is the meaning of things on the stack. In particular, how many arguments are there on the stack. It should not be controllable by the attacker. Okay, so the way this becomes exploitable is because your program can contain this kind of pattern. Right? So read input into some variable s, okay, and then you say, your program says printf s, okay, and you can see that in this case there is just one argument, right? So which is the format argument. The behavior of printf is that if there aren't any kind of format specifiers which are identified by this % symbol, right? So if it is just normal, if let's say s, so if s contains ABCD, then this printf will simply print that ABCD. Okay, so there's no problem. Except that if the input is coming from an attacker, the attacker need not send you ABCD. They can send you something like %s, %x, %n, %d, whatever, right? So in particular, if you are a programmer, if you read data from anywhere, you shouldn't do printfs. Instead, what you should do is, so the safe way is right? So if you do this, then it is safe because now the format string is controlled by the program, right? It's part of the program text. And So the attacker no longer controls how the content of the stack is interpreted. So the program is going to know that there is exactly one argument on the stack, which is a string, and it's going to print that string. But people make mistakes, and they write this, and since the program still continues to work, the error may not be detected, and in that case, the attacker has the ability to change the interpretation of the stack. Okay? Of course, still it's not very clear how the attacker will succeed, because printf is something that you use for printing things, which means that if you look at the effect on memory, it basically reads things from memory, right? It reads the values of variables from the memory, and it prints it on the screen or standard output or whatever. But there is also one specific format primitive that allows writing into memory. Okay, and this %n is used in advanced formatted printing functions, where the program needs to know, okay, it's kind of doing, let's say, pretty printing. It wants to sort of say, okay, I want to put only 80 characters or 35 characters in each line, and after that I want to break it and go on to the next line and so on. So in order to do that, the program needs to know, okay, how many characters have already been printed. And if enough characters have been printed, it's going to say print a new line and then go to the next line. So in order to write those sorts of things, there is a %n primitive. So you can ask the printf how many characters have you written, and it will store that value into some variable. And now this primitive allows the attacker to write to memory. And now they can use some format string like this in order to write to memory. I won't go through the details of exactly how this can be exploited, but again, this is one of the optional components of your assignment, and there I'll give you, there is detailed instructions on exactly how the attack works and how you can use it to do something. So